Legends and leaders, East and West. Is there balance in the Big Ten? Next on the Voice of College Football. Welcome in, everyone, to MarkRogersTV, the Voice of College Football, where we aim to provide the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. One of our viewers, David, suggested a video in which I would break down the balance in the Big Ten between the East and West divisions. Like, comment, share the videos on social media, and of course, subscribe here at the Voice of College Football if you love the game that we love. And therefore, once you subscribe, you turn on the bell for the notifications and know when we go live, which is just about every day. All right, the Big Ten was the last, along with the Pac-12 conference of the Power Five, to go to a championship game and split into divisions. Younger Big 12 fans, you may argue with me and say, no, it was the Big 12 just a few years ago that finally went to a championship game. But no, the Big 12 was second to the SEC in splitting into divisions in 1996 and playing a championship game for the first time. Texas-Nebraska in that championship game. And of course, 1992, the SEC was the first with the Birmingham-based SEC championship game at that time, Alabama and Florida. Then the ACC, then the Pac-12, and the Big Ten at the same time. All right. So the initial approach from the Big Ten was not to divide it geographically like the rest of the conferences have. The thought process was we need two balanced divisions, and I understand the process and I understand the thinking. You don't want one division to be much better than the other and there to be a competitive imbalance. You want it to be fair and just for all the right reasons, competitive balance. And that didn't necessarily seem as though it could be achieved in the Big Ten, dividing East and West. So we were introduced to the legends and the leaders. The Big Ten went a little highbrow, as they're apt to do, and came up with the legends and leaders and a chorus line of players and past head coaches that would be represented by the schools and so forth and so on. So the divisions were just that. They were balanced. You had Penn State, Ohio State, and Wisconsin in one division, counterbalanced by Nebraska, Michigan State in the other division. And, of course, we're talking about 2011 was the first championship game. And the programs at that time were at a different level, of course, to a certain extent. After 3 years, there was so much public feedback from fans and media critics to say, we don't understand the legends and the leaders. Nobody remembers who's in who, what division, and why. And so the Big Ten said, after just 3 seasons, scrap the legends and leaders. There was also a possibility of an Ohio State-Michigan repeat the week after the scheduled game to play in the Big Ten championship game. That was avoided because Michigan was basically no good at that time. Did not win a division title. The division champions at that time in 2011, 12, and 13 in the old Legends and Leaders format produced a Wisconsin-Nebraska championship game in 2012. Actually, the inaugural one was Wisconsin and Michigan State, and you had a 2013 game of Ohio State-Michigan State. And 2 of those games were really good. All right, then we switched to the East and the West, and if you look at the map, it makes total sense. The only real decision that needed to be made was, what do you do with the state of Indiana with Purdue and Indiana? So you split them up. You ensure that the 2 rivals play. It's the only rivalry in the Big Ten, cross-division rivalry that's guaranteed each and every year, the old Oak and Bucket game between Purdue and Indiana. So you split those 2 up. You throw Indiana in the East, Purdue in the West, and you've got your 2 divisions. It's easy to see on the map, East versus West. Then, of course, in 2014, part of that process also in which the Big Ten felt as though they could achieve competitive balance, even though they were throwing most of their better programs in the Eastern Division. They were also bringing in Maryland and Rutgers, who have proven to be 2 of the worst programs in the conference, and they were in the East Division, so that brought what was expected to be balance. Well, has there been balance? Let's check it out. If you just look at the championship game, there's no balance in the Big Ten. The East owns the championship game. Since the installment of the championship game, East versus West in 2014, the East is 6-0. The games have generally been good, somewhat competitive, not blowouts across the board, but 59-0 to get it started wasn't necessarily a good harbinger of things to come. Ohio State over Wisconsin in 2014. 2015, Michigan State, Iowa was a nail-biter down to the wire. 2016, a very competitive, good game between Penn State and Wisconsin. Nittany Lions won it by 11, but a very close game. 2017, good game between Ohio State and Wisconsin, but the Buckeyes clearly the better team. 2018, Ohio State 3 scores better than Northwestern, and this Ohio State team last year came back from 21-7 down to score 27 consecutive points against Wisconsin to beat the Badgers by 13. So the East is clearly at the top been better than the West when you look at championship play. 6-0, decent games for the most part, but not razor close games. But let's also keep in mind that basically one team has been generally responsible for that dominance. Ohio State has won 4 of the 6 championships, Michigan State the other, and then, of course, Penn State with the other one. So Ohio State 4, Penn State 1, Michigan State 1 during the East-West era. Okay. Now, if we look at the balance of games played between the two divisions, who's winning the games? Okay, in the Big Ten, they play 9 conference games. You play everyone in your division. That's 6 games. You play 3 non-division games. So do the math. 7 teams in each division playing 3 games against the other division. That's 21 games between East and West every year. What's it look like? Going back to 2014, 7-7. They split 7-7. This is not counting the championship game. These are regular season games. In 2015, 7-7. 2016, 11-10 West with the edge in 2016. 11-10 West. In 2017, the East won 13-8. In the last 2 years, it's been the East again winning, but just 11-10. So your tally for 6 football seasons between the East and the West is East 59, West 53. That seems balanced. Now, if you add in the championship games, then it becomes 65-53. A slight advantage, 6-5 basically, for the East over the West. So what can we conclude? Well, let's break it down a little further. Rutgers has really weighed down the East. So that 59-53, tack in Rutgers at 7-45. 7-45 in the Big Ten. They've lost their last 18 games in the Big Ten. So if you take Rutgers out of the East, and then it becomes a much more Eastern dominant series. Well, we also have to look at the worst team in the West to see if there's a counter to Rutgers, and there's really not. Illinois has been bad, and they've been the worst team in the Western Division from 2014 through 19. 13-39, though, which is still deplorable, 33% winning percentage, but not nearly as awful as 7-45. 6 full games better than Rutgers. All right. Now, I believe that when you're ranking a conference or a division, you got to look at the totality. You've got to look at the entirety of the conference or the division, of course. But the meaningful games are, of course, played by the better teams. They're playing the meaningful games. So there should be some weight given. I believe in both theories at the same time. Is every game created the same? Well, on paper, yes. Every game counts for 1 loss or 1 win. But the meaningful games that determine championships are played between the contenders at the top of the divisions or the conference. So if we look at the top 3 teams in the Big Ten East versus the top 3 teams in the Big Ten West, the Big Ten Eastern teams have been 14 games better. They've won 128 games versus 114 for the Big Ten West. If we look at how many teams in the Big Ten East have finished in the AP poll top 25 at the end of the season versus the West, East leads 17-12. Decided advantage, not a blowout, not embarrassing for the West, but 17-12. Those are the final teams to finish in the poll, the East versus the West. How about top 10 teams? Now we're talking near elite play in college football. The Big Ten East has produced 12 top 10 teams during this time. And if you look at it, Ohio State's finished in the top 10 all 6 seasons. So that's Ohio State 6 and the rest of the Big Ten East 6. So it's 12 for the East, 4 for the West. Only 4 final top 10 finishes for the West, which would, off the top of my head, be Wisconsin twice, Minnesota once, Iowa once. 4 for the West, 12 for the East, top 10 finishes. All right. How have the top 3 teams in the East fared in bowl games versus the top 3 teams in the West? Now, this may be a bit surprising on the surface. The top 3 in the Big Ten Eastern Division have gone 10-8 in bowl games. That's not I'm not taking the top 3 programs, meaning Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and looking at all their results. No, I took each year and took the top 3 in each division. So it could be different each year. But the top 3 teams in the Big Ten East have a compilation of 10 wins and 8 losses in bowl games. The Big Ten West is 9-3, but let's understand the level of play. Let's understand what bowl games are being reached by the likes of Ohio State in particular, but also Penn State, Michigan State to a lesser degree, versus what games are being reached by Wisconsin, Iowa, now Minnesota. Because in totality, the Big Ten Eastern Division is only 13-16 in bowl games, and the West is 17-11, but they're not playing as good of teams. I think that's pretty easy to see by the next roundup of numbers. The Big Ten Eastern Division has played 5 playoff games. Ohio State's made the playoff 3 times and won a national championship and lost the other 2 games, so Ohio State's 2-2, and Michigan State played in the other and got blown out by Alabama. So the Big Ten Eastern Division's 2-3. The Big Ten Western Division has yet, of course, in losing 6 conference championship games, has yet to make it to a college football playoff. So the Big Ten, having played 5 playoff games, and the Big Ten Western Division 0. How about the New Year's 6? The Big Ten Western Division has only played in 4 New Year's 6 games, and the Big Ten Eastern Division is played in 14, winning 8. So, what's the upside and the downside? As a group, the Big Ten Western Division has played on par with the Big Ten East. Again, it's 59-53 in scheduled games. But the top of the Big Ten Eastern Division is better than the top of the Big Ten Western Division, mainly because of Ohio State. Take away Ohio State, which, of course, the argument is you can't. I get that, but hang on for just a second. Take them away. They're unlike any other team in the whole conference during this 6-year period. Take away the best team in the Big Ten West, that's been Wisconsin. It lightens the numbers, of course, for the West, makes them less impressive, but not anywhere close to the substance of Ohio State and their added value to the East. It's not even close. All right, so the Big Ten Eastern Division has been top-heavy with Ohio State primarily, but also Penn State and Michigan. The West has been more balanced. And one change in levels or tiers that we've seen recently that could be a trend that could help the West would be the emergence of Minnesota and Nebraska fans. Maybe, maybe not. The emergence of Nebraska. I know they're not showing signs, but the potential is there for Nebraska to make a move and be decent, to be 8-4, decent, while Michigan State would be the culprit in the East that's most likely not going to be able to give the East the kind of production that they did from 2014, 15, and then 17. So Michigan State most likely descending, Minnesota ascending, possibly Purdue and Nebraska will be decent as well. My thoughts on the Big Ten East and West, I don't think it's an issue. I think there's one team that rules the conference. It's been the best team every year, even when not winning the conference. Ohio State, let's face it, has been the best team in the Big Ten from 2014 through 19. So the Big Ten has more of a Ohio State problem than it does an East versus West problem. My thoughts on the Big Ten: balance of power, East and West. Legends and leaders. Remember, it had only lasted 3 years. Leave your comments below and, of course, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football.